control is power, silence is control, and the reason this truth holds so much weight is because the moment you choose not to react, you shift the entire dynamic in your favor. Most people think that arguments are about who talks the loudest or who has the sharpest comebacks. But the reality is arguments are not won by noise, they're won by composure. Because the one who can remain still while chaos erupts is the one who holds the real power. Silence creates space. And in that space, you are no longer the hunted. You become the one who sets the tempo. You are no longer playing by someone else's emotional rules. You are creating the rules. And that is why control is always power. Think about the last time someone tried to provoke you. Their goal wasn't to exchange ideas. Their goal was to push your buttons. Because if they could make you defensive, angry, or frustrated, they win. They steal your calm. They own your reactions, and they feed off that energy. But when you stay silent, you take the one thing they crave away from them. You deny them the satisfaction of knowing they got under your skin. You refuse to give them emotional leverage, and now they're the ones scrambling. Silence turns the mirror back on them. It forces them to wrestle with their own words, their own energy, their own aggression. And you sit there still unshaken. In control, silence is not weakness. It's the purest form of strength. Because it takes discipline to not speak. It takes restraint to not defend. It takes confidence to know that you don't have to prove yourself with words. The person who feels compelled to explain and argue is usually the one on defense. The one scrambling to prove their worth. But the one who can sit in silence radiates certainty. You project an unspoken message. I don't need to convince you. I don't need to justify myself. I don't need to play this game. That message cuts deeper than any comeback could. Control in conflict is about more than just silence. It's about mastering your body language, your breathing, your presence. When you stay calm, your shoulders back, your eyes steady, your movements controlled, you are signaling dominance without saying anything. People pick up on this unconsciously. The human brain reads confidence in posture and energy long before it registers the words being said. So when you remain in control of yourself, you indirectly control how others respond to you. And that is the essence of silent power. You see, silence puts pressure on the other person. The longer you hold your composure, the more uncomfortable they get. Because human beings hate silence, we rush to fill it, to explain, to justify, to win. But when you don't play along, they start losing confidence in their own words. They begin repeating themselves, stumbling or overcompensating. Silence makes them question themselves. Am I making sense? Am I being too aggressive? Why aren't they reacting? Why aren't they fighting back? That questioning slowly eats away at their confidence. And that's when you've already won, because they defeated themselves. Most people underestimate silence because it feels passive. They think winning requires action, requires confrontation. But control is about knowing when not to act, when not to engage, when not to waste energy. Silence is the ultimate strategic pause. It's the same principle used in interrogation rooms, negotiations, or even high-stakes meetings. Silence draws out the truth. Silence unsettles. Silence commands attention. And silence ensures that you don't hand over your power by reacting too quickly. The first one to lose composure loses control. The first one to rush to fill silence loses leverage. The one who waits holds the upper hand. Control is not about suppressing your feelings. It's about mastering them. Anyone can get angry, anyone can lash out, but it takes real power to feel that fire rise inside you and choose not to give it away, to choose instead to breathe, to sit in it, to let the other person reveal themselves while you stay centered. That kind of control is rare, and because it's rare, it is feared. People may not admit it, but when they can't break you, when they can't get a rise out of you, they feel powerless, and that is the quiet victory silence gives you. And the most important part of this is that silence doesn't just affect them, it strengthens you. Every time you practice control instead of reaction, you teach your brain that you don't need external validation, you don't need to chase approval. You don't need to win with words, you win with presence. You build unshakable self-trust, and once you have that, no argument, no insult, no attack can take you down. Silence is your shield, control is your weapon, and together they turn every confrontation into your arena, where you dictate the energy, where you decide how far it goes, and where you prove that true power doesn't need to shout. True power simply stands still and owns the moment. Confidence is not built in the heat of an argument, it is revealed. And the person who masters the art of silence shows a confidence that no words could ever carry. Because when you remain quiet while someone else is trying to provoke you, you're not just avoiding conflict. You are broadcasting a deeper message. I know who I am. I don't need to prove it. And I will not be dragged into your chaos. That kind of self-assurance dismantles the other person's confidence without you lifting a finger, because while they are working hard to gain control of the situation through noise and ego, you are effortlessly showing that you already have control. The reason silence wins arguments is because it disrupts the power dynamic that people expect. Most people believe that when they challenge you, you will fight back, defend yourself, or give them the reaction they're fishing for. That's the script they know. But when you don't play that role, the script flips on them. Suddenly, they don't know what to do. Their rhythm is thrown off. And in that moment, they are exposed. They begin to doubt themselves because your silence forces them to sit with their own words. And often when people hear their own aggression echo back in silence, it doesn't sound as strong as they thought. It sounds insecure. It sounds desperate. It sounds weak. And the more you allow that silence to hang, the more their confidence starts to unravel. Confidence in silence is not about ignoring people. It's about control. Because true control is the ability to choose when to engage and when not to. Anyone can lash out when insulted, but it takes a strong, centered individual to say to themselves, I don't need to respond. I don't need to stoop to that level. And that choice not to react gives you power, because you are acting from strength, not weakness. When people see that they cannot move you emotionally, they lose leverage. And in that loss, their confidence cracks, because their ego thrives on controlling others. And you just denied them that privilege. Think about how confidence works. It's not about words. It's about energy. It's about presence. You've probably been in a room with someone who barely said anything, but their very presence commanded attention. That's what silence does in an argument. It amplifies your presence. It creates tension that works in your favor, because people are not used to silence. They are uncomfortable with it. And when you are the one holding silence with poise, you look strong while they look unsettled. You look measured while they look desperate. You look untouchable while they look unstable. That is how silence quietly erodes their confidence without you needing to raise your voice. And here's the truth. Silence is a mirror. It reflects everything back on the other person. If they are insecure, silence will magnify it. If they are overconfident, silence will puncture it. If they are seeking validation, silence will starve them of it. The power of silence lies in forcing the other person to confront themselves. And when you strip away the distraction of a verbal battle, all they have left is themselves. And most people are not as sure of themselves as they pretend to be. They rely on controlling you to feel powerful. And when you don't give them that reaction, they begin to crumble. Confidence in silence also comes from restraint. It's not about what you could say. It's about choosing not to say it, because you know you don't need it. You could defend yourself. You could fight back. You could argue. But you know that's wasted energy. And you know silence will do the job better. That restraint is confidence, because insecure people always feel the need to prove themselves, while confident people know that they don't have to. They let their actions, their presence, and their control speak louder than words ever could. Silence becomes proof of that strength. Now, let's be clear. Silence is not avoidance. It's strategy. There is a difference between running away from confrontation and choosing not to waste your energy on it. Silence is the choice to play the long game, because while someone else is burning energy trying to win a battle of words, you are conserving energy, holding ground, and letting their own words defeat them. And that is what breaks their confidence. The realization that you are not even playing their game, and yet they are still losing. That you are winning without fighting. That you are unshaken while they are unraveling. That realization cuts deeper than anything you could have said. Silence also allows you to stay centered in yourself. And that is where true confidence comes from. It keeps you in control of your emotions, your breathing, your body language. And that composure radiates outwards. People feel it, they see it, and they recognize that you are not someone to be easily manipulated, you're not someone they can control, and that recognition shifts the balance of power entirely, because when people realize they cannot move you, they lose confidence in themselves, they second guess, they stumble, and they eventually collapse under the weight of their own failed attempts to dominate you. So the next time someone tries to challenge you, remember this: you don't have to out-talk them. You don't have to outshout them. You don't have to out-argue them. You just have to outlast them in silence, because silence is not the absence of power. It is the purest expression of it. And when you master silence, you not only win the argument without saying a word, you also win something bigger. You win mastery over yourself. And once you have that, nobody can touch your confidence. Nobody can take your power. Nobody can control you. Reading body language is not about some fancy trick. It's about awareness. Because most of what people communicate isn't in their words. It's in how they move, how they sit, how they breathe. And when you sharpen the ability to see that, you hold the upper hand in every interaction. People reveal more than they realize with their gestures, micro expressions, posture, even the way they hold eye contact or avoid it. And when you train yourself to observe instead of just hear, you start noticing patterns that give you insight into what they're really feeling. And that knowledge is power. It allows you to anticipate their next move. It allows you to disarm them without ever speaking. And it allows you to maintain control. Think about the way someone leans forward when they're eager to prove a point, or how they fold their arms when they feel defensive, or the way their voice drops slightly when they're uncertain. Those are cues, little tells that give away their state of mind. And when you pick up on those cues, you know exactly where their confidence is strong and where it's fragile. That's the advantage of being a silent observer. You don't have to dominate with words when you already know the weak points they're trying to hide. You don't need to argue when their body language already betrays their insecurities. And the more you train yourself to see these signals, the more control you have in every exchange. Silence and observation go hand in hand, because when you choose not to speak, you create the space to see more. When you're not busy thinking about what you'll say next, you can give your full attention to the other person. And that's when you notice the subtle shifts in tone, the flicker in their eyes, the nervous tap of a finger on the table, the shuffle in their stance. These micro details are like a window into their mind. And once you learn to read them, you're no longer playing the surface level game. You're operating on a deeper level where influence happens without confrontation. Reading body language also gives you control over your own. Because once you become conscious of what people reveal with their movements, you start becoming more intentional with yours. You realize that the way you walk into a room, the way you stand, the way you use your eyes, the way you hold your hands, all of it communicates something before you ever speak. And when you choose to master that, you can project strength, authority, calm, or confidence without uttering a word. You can win arguments and establish dominance simply by being in control of the nonverbal messages you send. When you meet someone who's trying to challenge you, notice where their eyes go. Are they holding steady contact or darting away? Notice their breathing. Is it shallow from nervousness or steady with control? Notice their movements. Are they deliberate or jittery? All of these things will tell you whether they're grounded or shaken. And once you know that, you don't need to confront them directly, because your silence and your awareness will do the work. They will feel your steadiness against their unease, and that contrast alone will begin to break down their confidence. And here's what's fascinating. The more attuned you are to body language, the less you rely on guessing people's intentions, because their bodies rarely lie. Words can be twisted, tone can be manipulated, but the unconscious movements of the body leak truth. If someone says they're confident but their hands are fidgeting, you know the truth. If someone says they don't care but they're biting their lip or crossing their arms tightly, you know the truth. And that truth puts you in control, because you're no longer reacting to what they say, you're responding to what they are, and that's an entirely different level of mastery. Reading body language also helps you remain detached in moments of conflict, because instead of taking things personally, you can approach them as information. When someone lashes out at you, you can notice their clenched jaw or tight shoulders and recognize that it's not about you. It's about them. It's their insecurity, their fear, their frustration. And once you see that clearly, you don't have to defend yourself. You don't have to react, you can simply observe. And in observing, you gain the power of calm while their own lack of control weakens them. The beauty of this skill is that it compounds with practice. The more you watch, the sharper you get. You start picking up things most people overlook. You start sensing when someone is bluffing, when they're hiding doubt, when they're putting on a mask. And that awareness gives you a kind of invisible shield, because people can't manipulate you when you can see through them. They can't shake your confidence when you can read the cracks in theirs, and the quiet confidence of that awareness makes you a force in any situation without ever having to raise your voice. So when you find yourself in conflict, remember this: you don't need to dominate with words. You don't need to argue endlessly. You simply need to observe, because observation makes people uncomfortable when they know they're being seen more deeply than they want. Your silence paired with your awareness is enough to strip away their false confidence. And once you see them clearly, you control the dynamic, because nothing is more powerful than a person who doesn't just hear words but sees the truth behind them. And when you can do that, you don't just win arguments, you win people without even speaking. Silence is not weakness. Silence is a weapon. It's one of the most underestimated tools in human interaction, because most people rush to fill the space with noise. They panic when there's a pause. They feel the need to defend themselves, explain themselves, prove themselves, and in doing so they hand over their power. But the person who can sit in silence without flinching is the one who controls the room. Silence creates discomfort for those who aren't grounded. It forces them to reveal more than they intended. It pressures them to keep talking. And in that talking, they expose their insecurities, their inconsistencies, their emotional cracks, while you remain calm, still, unshaken. Think about the last time someone insulted you or tried to get under your skin. Your first instinct may have been to defend yourself, to clap back, to prove them wrong. But imagine if you said nothing. If you just held their gaze or let the words hang in the air without reaction. What happens then is powerful. They don't get the reaction they wanted. They don't get to feed off your energy. Instead, the silence bounces back on them. It makes them wonder if they went too far. It makes them question their own words. It makes them uncomfortable, because silence feels like judgment, and judgment feels heavy, heavier than any comeback you could have delivered. Silence also gives you control over yourself, because when you're silent, you're not just withholding words, you're buying yourself time to breathe, time to think, time to process without letting emotion hijack your reaction. This is how you avoid saying things you'll regret. This is how you avoid escalating a situation that didn't need to be escalated. Silence is not passive. It is deliberate. It is a choice. And the person who can choose silence in a heated moment is the person who holds discipline. And discipline is what sets you apart from everyone else who loses control in the heat of the moment. Another reason silence is powerful is because it flips the dynamic of control. Most people assume the one who's talking the loudest is the one in charge, but it's often the opposite. The one who says less, who chooses words with intention, who can pause without fear, is the one who holds authority. Think about leaders, mentors, or individuals you've respected. They rarely rush to speak. They let silence do the heavy lifting, because silence draws people in. It makes them lean forward. It makes them listen more carefully when you finally do speak. And that's how your words carry more weight than the endless chatter of someone who can't stand quiet. Silence can also be used strategically to disarm an opponent in any argument or negotiation. The more silent you are, the more the other person feels the pressure to fill the gap. And when they do, they often reveal their weak spots. They overexplain, they make mistakes, they give you more information than you had before. This is why silence is not just defensive, it's offensive. It puts the other person in a position where their own discomfort becomes your leverage. Their own need to break the silence becomes their undoing. While you stay composed and let them hand you the advantage without you having to lift a finger. Now, silence doesn't mean you avoid confrontation or allow disrespect. It means you pick your battles with intelligence. It means you don't waste energy on things that don't matter. It means you don't feed into someone else's chaos by matching it with your own. You understand that not every situation requires a response. Sometimes the strongest response is no response, because the absence of words creates a vacuum, and in that vacuum the other person is left to deal with themselves, their own emotions, their own mistakes, their own guilt. And that is far more powerful than anything you could say, but silence only works when it's paired with presence. You can't hide behind silence passively. You have to own it. When you choose not to speak, you must pair it with strong body language, steady breathing, firm eye contact, or calm detachment. That's when silence becomes intimidating, because you're not retreating, you're not avoiding. You're deliberately holding your ground without needing to raise your voice. It shows unshakable confidence. It shows that you're in control of yourself, and therefore in control of the situation. And that unspoken message lands harder than any words. Silence also teaches you something about patience. Because the person who cannot control their tongue cannot control their life. But the one who can sit in silence without the need for validation, without the need to prove a point, is the one who develops mastery over themselves. And self-mastery is the ultimate power. It means no one can bait you. No one can pull you into their chaos. No one can manipulate you with provocation, because you refuse to give them what they want. Instead, you let silence do the talking. And silence always speaks louder than noise when it's backed by strength. So the next time someone tries to bait you into an argument, the next time someone disrespects you, or tries to test your boundaries, remember the power of silence. Don't rush to defend. Don't scramble to prove. Don't let their words dictate your state. Breathe, ground yourself, and hold your silence with confidence. Because in that silence, you're not giving them what they want. You're showing them you cannot be moved. And in that immovable presence lies true dominance. Silence is not about saying nothing. It's about saying everything without words. And that's how you win without ever engaging in their game. When it comes to winning an argument without saying a word, one of the most powerful strategies you can use is body language. Because before people listen to what you say, they're already reading how you carry yourself. The way you stand, the way you sit, the way your eyes move, even the way you breathe communicates more than you realize. And if you can command your body language, you can dominate the space without opening your mouth. Because people instinctively respond to confidence, composure, and presence. These are things that can't be faked for long. They come from awareness and control. And when you master this, you don't just win arguments. You win respect without demanding it. Think about posture. When you walk into a room, are your shoulders slouched? Is your chest caved in? Are you making yourself small? Because if you are, you're already giving away power without anyone saying a thing. But if you stand tall, shoulders back, head up, you send a signal that says you belong, that you're not intimidated, that you're grounded. And people pick up on that immediately. It shifts the dynamic before any words are exchanged. Strong posture tells others they cannot easily shake you. And in the context of an argument, it silently declares that you are not someone to be underestimated. Eye contact is another weapon that most people don't know how to wield. Too much and you look aggressive. Too little and you look insecure. But steady, calm eye contact communicates presence and authority. It shows you are not rattled, that you are not afraid to hold your ground. And the beauty of eye contact is that it forces the other person to confront themselves. Because when you're quiet and you hold that steady gaze, it makes them uncomfortable. It makes them second guess themselves. And in that discomfort, they often lose composure. While you haven't even said a word, you've already shifted the energy in your favor. Your breathing also matters more than you think, because when conflict arises, most people start breathing shallow, fast. They let anxiety take over their body, and others can see it in their chest rising quickly, in their voice shaking, in their inability to stay still. But if you can regulate your breath, keep it deep and controlled, you project calmness. And calmness is intimidating in the face of chaos. It shows that you're not moved, that you're in control of yourself. And when you're in control of yourself, you automatically gain control over the situation, because the one who stays calm is always the one who wins. Even your gestures speak volumes. Crossing your arms tightly or fidgeting gives away insecurity, while relaxed movements, open palms, or controlled stillness project confidence. When you choose to be deliberate with your movements, you show that you're intentional, not reactive, and intentionality is power. Because people who are reactive can be manipulated, but people who are deliberate cannot. And in an argument, this difference decides who walks away on top. Your silence paired with deliberate body language makes people rethink their approach. It forces them to question themselves instead of questioning you. Facial expressions are also crucial because most people wear their emotions openly. They roll their eyes, smirk, grimace, or look away nervously, and each one of these micro expressions gives away power. But the person who can maintain a calm, neutral, unshaken expression is dangerous in the eyes of others because they can't read you. They don't know what you're thinking, they can't gauge if they're getting to you, and that uncertainty drives them to make mistakes. When your face doesn't give them feedback, they start overcompensating, pushing harder, exposing more. While you sit in quiet control, one of the most underestimated aspects of body language is space, how you occupy it and how you protect it. Shrinking into yourself, backing away, or letting someone invade your personal space without resistance signals weakness. But standing firm, keeping your ground, leaning in slightly when necessary. These are ways of silently declaring that you are not going to be pushed around. People feel energy in space. And when you claim your space without apology, you set boundaries without needing to verbalize them. That silent boundary is often more respected than any words could enforce. Another layer to body language is mirroring, because human beings unconsciously mirror people they respect or feel aligned with. But you can reverse this if you maintain composure and calmness. Others will often fall into your rhythm. They will subconsciously slow down, lower their tone, or back off. Because your body language is signaling stability, and stability always dominates instability. In this way, you are silently setting the tone for the interaction, and the other person adjusts themselves to you without realizing it. That's how silent influence works. Body language is not about acting or pretending. It's about alignment. When your internal state matches your external presence, that's when your silence becomes power. If you're calm inside, you project calm outside. If you're confident inside, your posture, eyes, and movements all align with that confidence. People can sense authenticity, and authenticity always carries weight. So the work is not just in how you move, it's also in how you master yourself internally, because body language begins with self-mastery. You can't fake it for long, but when it's real, it's unshakable. So the next time someone tries to pull you into conflict, before you even think about what you're going to say, pay attention to what your body is saying, because your body will often speak louder than your words ever could. If your posture is strong, your eyes steady, your breath calm, your movements deliberate, your presence anchored, you don't need to speak much at all. Your body language already communicates that you cannot be shaken. And when people realize they can't move you, they back down. That's how you win the argument before it even begins. Not by out-talking them, but by silently showing them they will never control you. The sixth keynote is about understanding the power of facial expressions and how they can either expose your vulnerability or project absolute control. Because most people reveal everything they are feeling on their faces without realizing it. They raise their eyebrows in surprise, tighten their jaw in frustration, roll their eyes in dismissal, or smirk when they think they've gained an advantage. And all of these subtle signals give the other person insight into what's going on in your mind. But the person who can master their facial expressions, who can hold a calm, unshaken, unreadable presence, instantly gains an advantage without ever needing to open their mouth, because silence is already intimidating, and silence paired with an unreadable face makes the other person deeply uncomfortable. When you think about arguments or confrontations, notice how quickly people expose themselves with their expressions. Someone feels attacked, and you immediately see their anger flash across their face. Their lips tighten, their nostrils flare, their brow furrows, and all of these micro expressions happen in seconds, without them controlling it. And that's when they've already lost ground. Because the other person sees they've gotten under their skin. They know exactly which button they've pressed. But when you train yourself to keep your face neutral, composed without giving away those involuntary reactions, you deny the other person the satisfaction of knowing if they've affected you. And that denial frustrates them because they no longer know what's working and what isn't. There's a reason why people in positions of authority, judges, interrogators, negotiators, even leaders, train themselves to maintain a steady expression, because it sends a message that they are not going to be manipulated emotionally. It tells others that they cannot be rid, and people fear what they cannot read. They second guess themselves, they stumble, they make errors, because when you're facing someone whose face tells you nothing, you start projecting your own insecurities into the silence. You start wondering if they know more than you, if they're secretly judging you, or if they've already won, and in that mental spiral, you weaken yourself, while the person sitting silently gains control. It's important to understand that a neutral expression does not mean a blank one. It doesn't mean you look lifeless or detached. It means you look steady, calm, and collected. It means your eyes are not darting nervously. Your lips are not twitching into nervous smiles. Your face isn't collapsing into visible frustration. It means you present yourself in a way that doesn't leak information. And this controlled presence creates power, because humans rely on reading expressions to gauge situations. When they can't read you, they panic internally, and panic always leads to mistakes. Facial control is also about refusing to give your opponent what they want, because when people try to disrespect you, humiliate you, or provoke you, what they're really hunting for is a reaction. They want to see your face drop. They want to see you flinch. They want to see anger or shame rise up and spill across your expression, because that's how they confirm they've hurt you. And once they confirm it, they push harder. But if your face remains steady, if your eyes remain calm, if your jaw doesn't tighten, you rob them of their weapon, and eventually they lose interest because there's no reward for their attempt. Another layer to mastering your expressions is learning to use silence as a tool. Because when someone throws negativity at you and your face doesn't respond, the silence becomes louder than words. It creates an awkward tension that they are forced to sit in. They feel exposed because you haven't given them the reaction they anticipated, and that void makes them question themselves. Maybe they said too much, maybe they crossed a line, maybe they revealed too much weakness, and without realizing it, they turn inward while you sit outwardly calm. This is how people destroy themselves in confrontation, because their own doubt consumes them, while your composure dismantles them without you doing a thing. Control over facial expressions also means knowing when to apply subtle cues to your advantage. For example, a slight steady gaze without breaking eye contact can unsettle someone who is trying to dominate you. A calm half smile when someone is raging can disarm them, or make them feel foolish. But these tools only work when you are deliberate, not reactive, when you use your expressions as strategy, not as involuntary leaks of emotion. The difference is mastery, because most people let their emotions dictate their face. But when you dictate your face, you dictate the flow of the interaction. It's not easy to master this skill. It requires practice. It requires catching yourself in the mirror when you're upset. It requires training your muscles to relax instead of tighten under stress. It requires slowing your breathing so your face doesn't flush with tension. But the reward is enormous, because once you gain this control, people will begin to respect you without knowing why. They'll feel unsettled around you when they try to provoke you and fail. They'll feel cautious because they cannot predict your next move. And this caution means you've already shifted the balance of power silently. So the next time someone tries to pull you into a confrontation, remember that your face is your greatest shield and your greatest weapon, because it's the first thing people look at. It's the first thing they read, and it's the first thing they react to. If you can master it, you will never be easily manipulated. You will never hand over your power unconsciously. And you will find that more often than not, the battle ends before it even begins, not because of what you said, but because of what you refuse to let show. The seventh keynote is about controlling your body language, because your body speaks before your mouth ever does, and most people give away their confidence, fear, anger, or insecurity in the way they stand, move, and carry themselves, even when they remain silent. Because the truth is, you don't have to say a single word for people to decide if you are strong or weak, grounded or desperate, in command or completely lost. Your posture, your stance, and your movements all send signals that either dominate the space or shrink you into it. And the person who understands this can walk into any room and win without opening their mouth. Think about the last time you saw someone walk in with their head down, shoulders hunched, arms wrapped tightly around themselves, moving fast as if they wanted to disappear. Before they even spoke, you already knew they lacked confidence. You already decided how much weight their presence carried. And the truth is, most people telegraph weakness this way without realizing it. They reveal that they are defensive. They reveal that they are uncomfortable. And when you're in a confrontation or a power struggle, your body language can betray you instantly if you don't control it, because the other person reads it as victory. They see your shrinking posture and know they've already gotten to you. Now imagine the opposite, someone who walks in steady, shoulders back, chin level, eyes forward, not arrogant, not tense, just grounded. Someone who takes up space not with noise but with presence. Someone who doesn't fidget or twitch, who doesn't cross their arms defensively, but lets their stance remain open and firm. This person doesn't need to speak for you to know they are confident, and in arguments or high pressure situations, this body language is like a silent weapon because it tells the other person that they cannot rattle you. It tells them you are unshaken, and that unsettles them because they cannot figure out how to penetrate your calm. People underestimate how much power is in stillness, because when most people argue or get emotional, their body reacts first. They lean forward aggressively, they point fingers, they pace, they slam things down, and all of those movements reveal a lack of control. They show that the other person has triggered them. But if you stand still, if you ground yourself, if you remain physically calm while the other person flails or explodes, you win without effort, because you're contrasting their chaos with your composure. And that contrast speaks volumes louder than words ever could. Your body language also controls how you feel internally, which is why training it is non-negotiable. When you force yourself to stand tall, keep your shoulders open, and your breathing steady, your brain follows the signals your body sends, and it calms you down, it centers you. It convinces you that you are in control, and once you believe it, you project it, because the way you carry yourself influences not only how others see you but how you see yourself. And in the middle of an argument or confrontation, this internal reinforcement can be the difference between losing your composure and holding the line. One of the most powerful elements of body language is eye contact, because people can tell everything from where and how you direct your gaze. If your eyes dart around nervously, you look weak. If you break contact too quickly, you look unsure. But if you hold steady eye contact without aggression, if you anchor your gaze with calmness, it communicates confidence. It communicates that you are not afraid. It communicates that you are not going to break. And this simple act can silence a room faster than shouting ever will, because eye contact paired with steady posture is a message that you own yourself, and therefore, no one else owns you. Another crucial part of mastering your body language is eliminating nervous tics, because people often fidget when they're uncomfortable. They tap their fingers, bounce their knees, scratch their face, tug at their clothes, or shift weight constantly. And every one of those movements sends the message that you're unsettled, that you're waiting for approval, that you're uncertain. But if you can train yourself to strip those habits away, to replace them with controlled stillness, you automatically appear more confident, and that appearance influences how others treat you. Because people respect what they perceive as control, and they challenge what they perceive as weakness. You also need to understand how to take up space without being aggressive, because power is not about puffing out your chest or towering over others. It's about grounding yourself where you stand, not rushing, not collapsing inward, not shrinking into corners, but allowing your presence to fill the room naturally. This could mean sitting with a relaxed but upright posture, not folding your body tightly. This could mean walking with deliberate pace instead of rushing. And these subtle shifts in how you carry yourself build a presence that others cannot ignore. Even in silence, the beauty of body language is that it cannot be faked for long. If you're pretending to be confident but your body is tense, your breathing shallow, your hands restless, people will pick up on it, because humans are wired to sense incongruence. Which is why mastery comes from practice and consistency, not performance. You have to build the habit of standing strong, breathing steady, moving deliberately, until it becomes who you are rather than who you pretend to be. And when that happens, you no longer need to think about controlling your body language, because it naturally aligns with the confidence you've built within. So in every argument, every confrontation, every situation where words fly like weapons, remember that your body is speaking louder than your mouth ever could. If you can stand firm, steady your movements, control your gaze, and eliminate nervous signals, you will project authority without saying anything. You will unsettle anyone trying to shake you. And you will silently dominate the room, because power is not in the noise. It's in the control, and your body language is the stage where that control either collapses or conquers. The 8th keynote is about silence as your ultimate power, because most people believe arguments are won through the sharpest words, the loudest voice, or the quickest comeback. But the truth is, silence is far more powerful than speech when it is controlled and deliberate, because silence unsettles people. Silence forces them to face their own words. Silence makes them overthink and question themselves. And in the middle of a confrontation, silence can dominate more effectively than any argument ever could. When someone throws disrespect, anger, or manipulation at you, they expect a reaction. They expect you to fight back. They expect you to defend, explain, or attack. And when you don't, when you simply remain silent, calm, unbothered, you throw them into a state of discomfort, because now they are left with their own words hanging in the air, echoing back at them, with no fuel to keep their fire burning. And the silence you hold becomes like a mirror, forcing them to hear themselves louder than they intended. And most people cannot handle that. The mistake people make is believing silence equals weakness. But silence is only weak when it comes from fear, when it comes from not knowing what to say. But silence used with intention, silence used with confidence, silence used as a strategy, that is strength, because it communicates restraint, it communicates control. It communicates that you are not desperate to be heard, that you don't need validation, that you can hold your ground without scrambling for words. And this alone makes people question how much power you really have, because they see someone who cannot be provoked into reaction. Consider this: in every heated argument, there is always one person who tries to outtalk the other, to drown them in words, to overwhelm with noise, and the other who stays still, listening, steady, saying almost nothing, yet somehow controlling the entire dynamic. Because silence creates a vacuum, and people rush to fill it. They reveal more than they intended, they expose insecurities, they over-explain, they make mistakes, while the one who remains silent learns, observes, and stays in command. That is the quiet dominance that makes silence a weapon. Silence also gives you time, because when you refuse to respond instantly, you buy yourself space to think, to analyze, to measure, to choose, and that space is where emotional mastery lies, because most arguments are lost in the heat of reaction. When someone blurts out something reckless, defensive, or aggressive, but if you hold silence, you interrupt that impulse, you stop yourself from giving away power, and you keep control of the timing. And timing in arguments is everything, because the one who controls when to speak controls how much their words weigh. Silence is also intimidating, because people cannot read what they cannot hear. When you stay quiet, they don't know what you're thinking. They don't know if you agree, if you disagree, if you're planning something, if you're unaffected. And that uncertainty eats away at them, because human beings crave feedback. They want to know where they stand, and when you give them nothing, their imagination takes over. And most of the time, their imagination makes it worse than reality, which means your silence is doing more work than your words ever could. But silence doesn't mean absence. Silence paired with presence is the true weapon. If you're silent but your posture is strong, your eyes steady, your demeanor calm, then your silence speaks louder than any words, because now your silence isn't avoidance, it's declaration. It's saying, I don't need to respond to you to own this moment. I don't need to argue with you to win this exchange. My silence is my confidence, and that unsettles people more than any aggressive comeback. Another layer of silence's power is knowing when to break it, because silence is strongest when it's chosen, not permanent. And when you've mastered holding silence, then the moment you do choose to speak, your words hit harder, because they come after stillness, after restraint, after patience, which makes them land with more weight. Because now people are listening. Now people are waiting. Now people understand that if you've chosen to break silence, what you're about to say carries meaning. And that makes every word more valuable, more memorable, and more impactful. The discipline of silence is not easy, because it goes against ego, it goes against pride, it goes against the human instinct to defend and to prove. But the strongest people know that they don't need to fight every battle with words. They don't need to chase validation. They don't need to respond to every provocation, because they understand that silence is not the absence of strength, but the presence of it. And once you learn to master silence, you no longer chase arguments. You no longer lose yourself in noise. You command the space without sound. So when you find yourself in conflict, when someone tries to bait you, to disrespect you, to challenge you, remember that silence is not surrender. Silence is strategy. Silence is strength. Silence is domination without engagement. And if you can hold silence with confidence, if you can pair it with presence, you will win arguments without words. You will disarm people without effort, and you will project a level of control that makes others think twice before trying to come against you again. Because in the end, the loudest voice is not the one that speaks the most, it's the one that can speak the least and still be heard.